Hello, everybody. I'd like to start this week's lessons by telling you a little story when I was growing up. I had a neighbor, and I can remember going over to the house as a child and seeing their staircase and climbing their staircase for the first time. I thought to myself, man, these steps are so much steeper than the stairs at my house. And when I went home, I can remember talking to my parents about it and saying, Bobby, that was my neighbor's name. I said, Bobby's stairs are so much steeper than our stairs. And my parents said, well, how much steeper are they? And the only word that I could really describe it with was my hand. I was like this. They were like this. So it's really hard to describe steepness. So how would you do it? Let's look at two sets of examples. Let's look at two sets of stairs here and talk about it and say, well, which stairs do you think are steeper? And I think obviously you would say the steps on the left are steeper, right? And you'd say, well, okay, you can obviously see it, but how much steeper and how could you compare the two? That's a different question. That's kind of harder to answer without using your hand and saying like this, like I did. Another place where we can talk about steepness is, well, you're probably familiar with these symbols if you ski or snowboard. These symbols are used in case you can't read, which you might be a child, very young, and you don't have the time to read it and you just see the symbol. Or if you're going very quickly and you're just looking in a direction, you want to be able to see the symbol to see what kind of slope you're about to go down. And if you're not a good skier, you want to stay near the green. If you're a better skier, you want to go towards the blue and the blacks. So let's look at these two skiers right here. We can see that obviously the slope, the second slope, is steeper than the first slope. But how much steeper and how could you compare them? A little tricky, right? So we're going to talk about this word slope. And slope is the steepness of a line. And basically you can use anything, you can measure anything with slope that has that you're able to make a line of it. So we use the letter M, and this is where it gets confusing. Don't like pause it or don't close it and say, oh, this is too tough. The word M is just used to represent that word slope. And basically what slope is, it's rising over running. Or this crazy thing, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And if you pay attention here in the next couple minutes, I'm going to show you and you're going to say, oh, this is super easy. Okay, so let's go back to those steps. And let's say that we're going to look at the slope or the steepness of these steps by, I'm going to put a point on the edge of every step and I'm going to draw a line through it. And then I can say, well, geez, all right, I guess I can measure the steepness of that line by using this tool, and a lot of you are familiar with it, a protractor. And I could see, well, it's going up 10, 20, 30, 40, and I go up here 41 degrees. It looks like it's a 41 degree line. Okay, so that's one way to do it, or angle. And you can do the same thing with the second steps. You know, the points in the line, you can see, well, that line's steeper than this one. But the question is, how much steeper? I could get the protractor out and compare, but I could also do this thing, right? The rising and the running. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a grid over the top of the stairs, and I'm going to say, all right, well, now I can actually do rising and running. And I want to say, how many points do you need to make a straight line? You only need 2. But before we do the 2, let's talk about what the word crosshairs mean. If you ever played a video game or you shot a gun, looking through a scope, you can tell what the crosshairs are. And there's a lot of crosshairs. Here's crosshairs, here's crosshairs, they're everywhere. So let's look at this set of crosshairs. And you can see that where the 2 lines cross, we're looking for a dot that's going to be right on that. And X marks the spot, right? So where down here do 2 points cross exactly? And I'm going to use my first dot, and all the way up here I'm going to use this dot. So I'm going to get rid of the rest. And I'm only going to look at those, and I'm going to say, well, how much do I rise? How much do I go up to get from one dot to the other? I go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I go up 5, and I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 to the right. So rise over run. That is slope. So how much did I rise? I rose 5. And how much did I run? I ran 6. So we could say the slope of this staircase is 5 over 6. All right? And we can call these things the risers, and we can call these things the runners. That's really what they're called. And think, to climb steps with your foot, what do you need to do? You need to lift your foot or rise with your foot and then run with your foot. Some kids get those backwards. It's rising over running. Okay, let's look at those same slopes that we were looking at earlier and see, well, geez, now we can actually compare them. How much does this slope rise? It rises 10 rise, and how much does it run? Oh, sorry. Oh, I got that backwards. Let's do this again. It rises 4, and it runs 10. So the slope of this line would be 4/10. Well, this one obviously looks steeper, right? So how much does this rise? It rises 7, and it runs 10. So the higher number, 7/10 compared to 4/10, 7/10 is the bigger number, which means it's a steeper line. Okay, so rise over run. So let's do an example problem. We got this guy skiing down the hill. We got the grid, all right? And we basically want to know, look in the background and say, how steep is this mountain that he's going down right now? And we can do that with this line, right? So we need to find 2 points on this line that cross the crosshairs perfectly. Can you find them? I think I see them. Okay, I think, no, that doesn't cross. That one doesn't cross either. And I'm getting up, ooh, that looks pretty good. And another one way up here, this looks pretty good. So I'm going to use these 2 points, and I'm going to label them. This is point 1,5, and this is point 6,2. And you can imagine this is in the first quadrant of a coordinate plane. And what we're going to do is, we're going to do rise over run. So I'm going to think of a number line. I'm going to go from one point to the other. I'm going to rise 1, 2, 3. Going up is positive. So I rise 3. And I run 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right. But notice I went to the left. And when I go to the left on number lines, that's negative. So I rose positive 3 and I ran negative 5. So my slope is 3 over negative 5. Now though, let's say that you didn't have the graph or the coordinate plane. All you had was the points. And you don't know what it looks like on the coordinate plane. All they give you is the points. Well, you can't obviously do rise over run anymore. So what we're going to use is we're going to use this crazy formula. And don't get scared. It's pretty easy when you get the hang of it. It's just looking, and we're going to label our points first. We're going to call this point 1, and we're going to call this point 2. And since this is point 1, we're going to call this x1, and we're going to call this y1. And we're going to call this x2, and we're going to call this y2. And basically, I got 4 things that I want to substitute. So I'm going to do parentheses minus parentheses over parentheses minus parentheses. And I just basically plug the points in. What's y2? Y2 is 2. What's y1? It's 5. What is x2? X2 is 6. And what is x1? It's 1. So 2 minus 5, what is that? That's negative 3. And 6 minus 1 is 5. And you'll notice we get the same exact answer. So you can do it that way if you want. You could even reverse these, and you could say y1 minus y2 over x1 minus x2. As long as you're going in the same direction, it's the same thing, it's fine. All right, so quick thing about slope. Slope, when you're going this way, it is positive. Anytime the slope is taking you in that direction at all, okay, you're going up. I like to think of like you're reading a book, the rising action. It's positive. I even heard somebody say, if you're climbing a mountain, puffing. You're puffing. You're positive. All right. And then when you get to the book after the climax, you get to the falling action. Slopes that go this way are negative because they're going down, I like to say. All right. And then slopes that are going this way, that are completely flat, they have a 0 slope. That's important to remember. And then finally, Let's say, oh, I fall off the cliff. That's called no slope or undefined. A vertical slope is undefined or no slope, and a horizontal slope is zero. So that can get confusing. And I was confused with that until I was a senior in high school. Even in college, I would mix up this zero slope compared to no slope. They are two completely opposite things. They are not the same. So you're going to see that more often, in the future, but just do your best to remember those two. And you can always look back at this.